In this video, we are going to show how to install a component repair kit on the power supply board that is used in this Sony TV. The symptoms that can be fixed with this repair kit include if you have a dead set, a TV that will not turn on, and or has no 5-volt standby. This repair kit will work on the following part numbers. Click the annotation in the video to go to another video to learn how to find the part number on your power supply board. I will start by locating my components that will be replaced and removing them from the board. Some of the replacement components may look different than the original components on the board, but you can go by location number on the replacement component bag to be sure it is going to be in the correct place, even if it looks different than the original component. I will use my desolder gun to remove the components by flipping over the board, applying heat with the desolder gun, and then sucking up the melted solder. If you do not have a desolder gun, you can use a solder iron and wick or a solder sucker. The only components that I am not removing from the board right now are the ones that are connected to the heatsink and this IC. After I have removed the components from the board, I will clean up the areas on the back side of the board with a Q-tip and rubbing alcohol. The first component that I'm going to install is this IC. For this IC, there is a circle on the chip. There is also a circle on the board. When installing this chip, be sure to line up the circle on the chip with the circle on the board so that it is installed correctly. Next, I will find the location on the back side of the board and using my solder and iron, solder the leads to the board. Next, I will put the fuse through the top side of the board. When working with your replacement components, be sure not to twist and bend them too much as the wires may break. The fuse in the kit may not physically look like the fuse on your board, but it does work the same. After I have slid the leads through the holes, I will flip the board over and again solder the leads to the board. After I am done, I will trim the leads close to the board. Next, I will install a resistor. I will use the same process of getting the leads through the holes at the location number and then soldering the component to the board on the back side. As always, be sure to trim the leads. Next, I have a different resistor. I will use the same process of getting the leads through the holes at the location and then soldering the component and trimming the leads. We will also do the same for the last resistor. When removing this chip, it can sometimes be difficult to loosen the factory solder. One option is to add solder to the pins to help try and loosen it. The recommended solder to use is a 6040 rosin core. Then you can use your iron and solder wick to remove the solder holding the chip to the board. If you are still unable to loosen the chip, it could be because the chip has glue on the back side of it that will help hold it to the board. If you have a heat gun, you can try using that to heat up the area and loosen up the chip. Be careful when using a heat gun because if you use too much heat too close to the board, you can cause it to bubble. Here we will use a heat gun to warm up the chip and remove it. After I have pulled the chip from the board, I will use my solder wick to clean up the pads and then clean the area with my Q-tip and rubbing alcohol. Next, I will get the chip in place on the board. Then I will add a little bit of solder to my iron. Next, add some solder flux to the pins and use my iron and solder to secure the chip to the board. You can always go over the pins twice with flux and solder just to be sure they are secured. Here we have a close-up for soldering the other side of the chip. You may need to go over the pins multiple times with the solder and iron to get the chip completely soldered in place. I will use a screwdriver to loosen the 4 transistors and 1 diode from the heatsink. Then I will flip the board over and desolder the bottom sides from the board. Then I will use a pliers and they should pull right out from the board. Next, I will clean up the heatsink and remove the old compound off it. As we are showing in the video, some of the transistors will need to be bent on the legs so that they fit through the holes in the board. I will apply heatsink compound to all of the transistors and reattach the transistors and diode back to the heatsink with screws. After they are attached, I can flip the board over and solder them on the bottom side of the board. After I am done soldering them, I will again clean up the bottom side of the board and also trim the leads. We have replaced all of the components in the kit, and now your board is ready to be reinstalled into your TV. Thank you for watching one of our many tutorials here at ShopJimmy.com. If you have any further questions regarding your repair, simply post a question in the comment section below. We strive to learn and share new TV repair tips every day. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and grow with us. Share our videos with your friends to help us spread the savings. And don't forget to hit that like button.